Everybody, welcome back to Taji's World of Books. And guess what? I had another fantastic reading week and I want to talk to you guys about it. Hey you guys, so welcome back. So as you heard in the teaser, I had a fantastic reading week and I've got some books that I want to share with you, some of which you probably already have read. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you saw that I was going to read them in my August TBR and I actually got to them. And so without further ado, let's talk about them. So today I've got 5 books that I want to talk to you about, and they are all freaking fantastic. They are all 5-star reads. They are all 5-star spicy, and they are all like 4 or above star in angst, so super angsty, and they just were so good, and I'm so excited to talk to you about it. Okay, so the first book that I want to talk to you about is Brutal Vows, and this is J.T. Geissinger. And this is her Queens and Monster series, book 4, the final book in the series. And we have been waiting for this story. It is Spider and Raina's story, and it is fantastic. It is so good. The plot is basically in the last book. And it's nice because this is also like a wrap up. Like you get to see all the other characters from all the other books that appear, do cameos in this book as well. So you get to see how they're doing. So that's fantastic. And so the wrap up is after we ended the 3rd book, we see that Spider is really heartbroken over some things that happened in that book. And he really has just given up and he's decided, you know, I don't want love involved in any of my relationships. Like I just want to be in an arranged situation and I just want to be done. And that way, once I'm married, I can go on and do my thing and like, you know, do my work and like whatever. And I don't have to worry about like love. I just want to be shut down from love. And so that's what he does. He decides to go into an arranged marriage with the mafiosa, the Italian mafia, to make an alliance so that the Irish mob and the mafia can kind of come together and be an alliance against the Bratva or against the you know, the Latvians or whomever else they need to be. And that's what they do. And so he is arranged to be married to Raina's niece. And I don't remember Lily, and she is young and innocent and very different than, you know, somebody that you think Spider would connect with, but he agrees to it nonetheless. Now, Raina is an absolute ice queen. She is a widower, and we recognize, or we learn very quickly, that she is widowed from a 13-year-long, I believe it's 13-year-long relationship to a very abusive older man, and it was an arranged marriage, and she is very bitter from that marriage. And not only was he super abusive, but there is some speculation that how she got out of that marriage is that she murdered him. But we don't know whether that is true or not, and she never cops to it. And so you'll find out once you read the book. And so the story evolves from there. And when I say she's an ice queen, she is a bitter bitch. And she is like not to be fucked with, and she's not to be messed with, and she's not going to take nonsense. And she is going to oversee every aspect of this relationship and this arranged marriage, because she is not going to let her niece get into the same situation that she was in. And so she is like all in it just to make sure that it's all good. And so, but the thing that normally I don't like ice queens, and normally I don't like that bitter, nasty, like really jaded character, but Raina pulls it off, and JT pulls it off in this book, because Spider is like, the minute that she starts like spewing fire at him, he is like, hey now. He really loves it, and it just turns him on, and he just wants more and more and more and more of it. And he recognizes that this is wrong, and he knows that it's not right, because he is in an arranged situation and he is hell-bound on going forward, because he's like, if I get into a relationship with Raina, I could fall in love with her, and love is dangerous, and love never works out. It always ends in like a bad situation. He's like, Lily, I don't run any risk of falling in love with her. He's like, I'll treat her right, I'll take care of her, I'll do all the things that I'm supposed to, but I will never love her. And so this is the safest situation for me, and that's what he wants. But Raina is a whole nother situation. And so the whole book is like the angst and the push and the pull and dynamics of these two, and what actually happens and how it evolves. And I don't want to give away too much, but it's fantastic. It is so good. I can say that you can read this book as a standalone if you want to. You don't have to read the other 3 books in the series. You will not know some of the characters that are making cameos, and you will not know some of the references to the relationship. So I do recommend that you read it in order. But if you're not a purist, like, okay, fine. but it is so good. It is a 5 out of 5 star. I'm so sad to see this story end. I love that there is a cameo from Killian Black in here. We have seen Killian in many of her other books and series, so go and check those out, like her Wicked Beauty series and a couple of her other series where Killian is like, you know, part of a secret organization that could be like MIS or CIA or, you know, Mind K Ultra, like some kind of organization they call the Secret 13 or the 13 or whatever, that is pulling the strings behind the strings to ensure that political as well as criminal enterprises are evolving and moving in the direction that he wants them to. And so Killian makes an appearance. There was a little bit of a reference, excuse me, there was a little bit of a reference to whether or not Killian is going to get another book or he's going to get his own book, you know, separate from this. So I don't know if she plans on doing that, but I would be all in it to win it if she did do that. So I highly recommend the Queens and Monsters series. Like I said, all of them are fantastic. They're a really good read. JT is a great writer. She gives angst, she gives spice, and she gives a great plot and storyline and character development. So if you want to check it out and you want like mafia adjacent, mafia-esque type reads, this is your deal right here. Brutal Vows. Okay. The next book that I read is Charity B, and I am reading several Charity B books because if you have seen on my channel that Charity B is going to be on the channel in September, check it out. I already have a place marker, so go and be prepared for that, because that is going to be a bonkers interview, because we know Charity B is writing some crazy stuff, and I love everything that she writes that I have read so far, and Anointed is no different. And this book is banana pants, okay? This book is insane. So here's the deal with this story. This is about, it starts off with Zebediah and Laurel Ann as children. And it becomes very clear that they are best friends, and they are about 13 years old, 12, 13 years old, and they live in a very secluded town. And as you read, you start to realize that this is not a town, this is a cult. They are indoctrinated into a cult. And when you start to hear the dynamics of the cult, you're like, this is some BS. Like the God that they call outsiders Philistines, and they call the God that they follow is some like wacky, I can't remember the name of the God that he is, but it's not God. It's like something like insane. And so they have this whole made up belief and religion, but it's like any other cult that's out there. The tenets are, you know, Zaron. That's what it is. Zaron is the God that they believe in. And the tenets that they hold is, as is any other cult, women are subservient, and it is a plural society in that one husband has multiple wives, and they start taking the wives as young as when they get their blood. They call it the blood of the innocents. And the blood of the innocents is basically when they start to menstruate, then they are old enough to marry, and basically are married off in an arranged marriage to cult leaders. And these cult leaders are usually these disgusting 40-year-old 50-year-old dudes that are married to 13-year-old girls. It's freaking disgusting. And they believe that it's their right, and they believe that they're doing their duty, and they're doing their the things that they have been put on this earth to do, which is to procreate. And so you might have in a family where one husband has, you know, 5 sister wives, and they've got like 40 children among them. It's like insanity. And so that's what this book is about. And so Zebediah is very close to Laurel Ann, and what happens is that on their way home, they stop at a swimming hole, and they are swimming and hanging out, as they have done many times in the past. And he looks at her when she's getting undressed in her bloomers and petticoat, because they dress in very old-fashioned garb. He's like, Laurel Ann, he's like, your clothes. And she's like, what? He's like, your clothes. And they look, and she has started her period, and they know what this means. This means automatically she is going to be married off to some cult leader. and they are like, you know what, and it's Zebediah's decision. He says, you know what, he's like, give me your clothing, give me this. He takes off his socks, he gives her socks to make as a, like, you know, a pad, and he takes her old clothing and kind of takes it away from her. He's like, I'm gonna put it on the burn heap. He's like, go home, change your clothes, don't tell anybody, keep it quiet for as long as you can, and until we figure out another alternative. And she's like, okay, I'll do that. And so they proceed on this plan, and she goes home, and of course the plan never works out as is expected. It is discovered what they have done, and they are going to suffer the consequences. And the punishments that are delivered in this book are horrific and horrible, but at the same time, like, it gives you a look into, it is a very realistic account of what goes on in cult and crazy ass societies like that experience this. It is a very realistic account, because I've done research on this for other purposes, and it was a really, really realistic account, and the story was told very well. It does end in an HEA. I am going to say that. The characters go through an arc and a development. It does have some time jumps in it, but the time jumps I feel like are necessary, and it wasn't done in a way that I hate. It was done in a very appropriate way, and I thought that this book was fantastic. There was parts of it that I was angry. There were parts of it that I cried. There were parts of it that I just gasped. There were parts of it that I was just like, I couldn't wait to get through it, because I was like, the anger and rage that was going through me, I was just like, oh my God, this is like the fact that an author can generate this kind of emotion and feeling and angst in me from just reading her book is fantastic. I really loved it. And I think it's a story that needs to be told, because guess what? There are girls that are living in these circumstances, maybe not in the United States, although I think there are, but maybe in other countries. But I think that this is like realistic, this propaganda and nonsense and BS, and how it all comes out and how it all works itself out in the wash is like really fascinating and amazing. Now there are some there's a non-con situation in here, and there are two non-con situations, one of which is really horrible, and the other one is like, they both are terrible, but one is like cringe, like so cringe. So just be prepared. So check out the trigger warnings, and this is a dark romance for sure. And because of the content and the theme, not because of the dynamic between the two characters that ultimately fall in love and like what becomes of them. So their dynamic is not crazy, but just the circumstances around everything is crazy, if that makes sense. So I highly recommend, if you have any interest or you have anything, I think you should check it out and you should try it. If you have some reservations and you're a little bit worried about it, then wait until after the live show and the author interview that I do with Charity, because I'm going to bring up the hard-hitting questions. We're going to talk about all of this stuff, because she does write some really hard-hitting things and some difficult things, and some people find it distasteful and other people find it fascinating and they really enjoy it. And so I want to just talk to her about her psychology behind her writing and her sort of muse for her characters and how she comes up with her concepts and how she comes up with her story. So I think it'll be a very interesting interview. And again, go to my channel, and I will also link the interview schedule down below. I think it's on the 18th of September, I believe, if memory serves correctly, but I don't want to misguide you. So just check in the link below, and you'll find the information there. So that's that. And this is a 5 out of 5 star. I gave it a 5 out of 5 star. Like I said, everything's 5, 5, 4 for sure. Okay, so the next book that I want to talk to you about is Blue Hill Blood. And I was like, when I picked this up off the shelf, I was like, where did I get this? I got it in a book box. But then I looked, and it's autographed, or it's signed to me. So I believe what happened is that this is pen named Elizabeth Gray, but this is Kay Webster, and Kay Webster wrote this as Elizabeth Gray, and I believe she sent it to me after an interview or whatever that we did. And so I went ahead and read this. When I realized it was Kay, I was like, oh, I know it's gonna be good, because Kay is like always good. And this is so fascinating. This is really, really fascinating. Okay, so Henry is a writer present day, okay? However, the book starts off in the past, and in the past, Henry is a little boy with his sister who is dying of cancer, okay? And she is dying of cancer, and their parents, their relationship, their family dynamics went from really positive and happy to traumatic and argumentative and tumultuous in a very short amount of time. So it's Henry, Helen, and his mom and dad. And on this particular night, Henry and Helen, who are quite close, despite her cancer diagnosis, quite close, hear their parents arguing in another room. And suddenly the door of the bedroom bursts open and the mother comes in and she's got blood on her face and she dives into bed. She locks the door, she dives into bed with the children. And the next thing you know, you hear the father banging on the door, trying to get in. And to make a long story short, he slaughters the entire family. And that happens in the first like 3 pages, okay? And so then we jump forward and we realize that Henry, the youngest, survived. And we learn how he survived and what happened as a result. Okay, so moving forward, Henry now is an adult and he is a writer. And he writes these like dark, they're not romances, they're dark romance serial killer novels that are on the New York Times best-selling list. So like if you think of like a Misery from like Stephen King's situation, it's like I'm your biggest fan. He is like a writer and like fantastic and everybody loves his work, and many of his works have gone into like miniseries and movies and all of that. And so he is finishing up the final novel of that series, and he has writer's block, and he is in a devoted relationship with his wife Lisa and their 2 daughters. And he is struggling to get this last book out. And so Lisa, his devoted wife, says, you know what, I am going to book you. I found a fantastic place for you to go and stay. You're going to go finish your novel, and we're going to go on a vacation after that. And the place that he goes to is Blue Hill, the Blue Hill Lodge in Upper Maine. And the story sort of evolves from there. And it is fantastic because it's a story within a story, because we're following Eli, which is the character in his book that he's writing about. And then we're also following Henry. Now, Henry is accosted by a guy who is his biggest fan and starts to stalk him and follow him around town, while also at the same time, somebody is mimicking his book, his writings about Eli, and mimicking the murders that Eli commits in the town of Blue Hill. And so now we've got to figure out who did it and when and under what circumstances. And it is banana pants and crazy and bonkers, but it is so, so good. I have to say that the last chapter, the write-up chapter of this, is like left me going, like I sent Kay Webster a message. I'm like, we gotta talk, and I gotta talk about that ending. It is just insane. Like it leaves you kind of going, wait, what? What's going on? It's so, so good. And it's a really quick read, and you fall in love with these characters like from the start. Like you even fall in love with Eli and the story that's within the story. You want to know what's going on with him, and you want to see more, and you feel like you want everybody to get an HEA, and it's just so good. It's really, really good. This is a 5 angst for sure, because you just don't know what's happening and under what circumstances, and you're rooting for everybody, but you don't want to see anybody make mistakes, but characters make mistakes all the time. And if we as the readers see that the mistake is happening and we see it coming, and we're like, don't go into that room, and then they do, and then some stuff happens. And anyway, so it's really, really good. I highly recommend it, and you should check it out. It's written by Elizabeth Gray, like I said, but this is a pen name for Kay Webster, and it's called Blue Hill Blood, and it's a standalone novel, and it's so good. Okay, so the next book that I want to talk to you about, this came in my Reveal book box, and this is Lost in You, and it's Flirting with Forever. I believe there are 4 books in the series, and it's by Amanda Bailey. And I did the right thing this time. I said I am not going to buy, because normally I buy all 4 series, all books in the series. I get them all, I read them all, I don't like them, and now I feel obligated to read them because I bought the other books. This time I didn't do that, and I'm really glad that I didn't, because I was kind of bored with this. Like, it was a 3-star read. So this is about Madison Green, and Madison meets up with a guy named Sean, and this is a second chance romance. It's a forced proximity. Madison is a school teacher. She's teaching at a school. She went to school at a high school. She has a group of friends that she becomes part of this book club with. She has recently gotten out of a relationship with a guy named Colin, I believe his name is. I believe it's Colin. She got out of a relationship with Colin because Colin cheated on her, and he did so. She caught them in bed, together, and she just, with one of her really good friends, and so she just was like, this doesn't work for me, so she separated from him. So make a long story short, she's known Sean forever. She had a crush on him in high school. Unbeknownst to her, he had a crush on her, but they both were too afraid to bring it forward, or they were either in other relationships at the time. She doesn't think that Sean is a really good guy these days, because Colin, basically her ex who cheated on her, told her that Sean, who was dating a girl named Dana, cheated on her as well. So she kind of is looking at Sean sideways. But to make a long story short, it is a fake dating trope. So you got so many tropes. You got fake dating, forced proximity, and second chance. Okay. So the fake dating trope comes in that she is because she has to go to her brother's wedding and she doesn't want to be the only person that constantly shows up with not a date, and she's always single and she gets a lot of flack from it from her family. So she embarks on this idea with Sean that he will accompany her as her fake date partner to this wedding, and they do that. And while they're there, a blizzard occurs, nor'easter, they can't leave. There's a lot of miscommunication that happens. She runs off when she hears some stuff and she just doesn't talk to him. And I'm just like, you are like 25 years old. Like, rather than, you know, coming clean, being honest, hearing what he has to say, you're going to just run away. Like, I don't have time for that. Like, after I just finished the cult chick and the serial killer murder guy and like people that got legit problems in that, you know, like I got a serial killer chasing me. Like the fact that you don't want to like confront a guy about and tell him a secret that you've been harboring because you decided to immerse yourself in his relationship. Like, it's just drama, and it's artificial drama. And I just was like, what is the point of this? And I don't like when things can be easily resolved when you can just communicate. And he agreed to go with you to be your fake date and to do all these things for you and spend the weekend with you at this wedding, right? And then you get caught in a nor'easter and you have to go back, and now you're still there. And when you find out something, you can't give him the benefit of the doubt of having a 5-minute conversation that you just run off and leave him there by himself. Don't tell him where you're going, refuse to answer any of his phone calls. And then it's now a couple of weeks later and you still haven't talked to him. Bye, girl. Bye, Felicia. I don't have time for you. Like, that's selfish to me, and I just don't have time for it. So I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. And so I was glad that I did not pick up the other books in the series, because it's just, if this is the kind of writing this is, it's not worth it. I'm going to waste my time on it. So that's Amanda Bailey. And then the last book that I want to talk to you about is Captive, and Captive by R.J. Lewis. And I love this book. I love this book so much. I love it so much. Okay, so this is about Vixen and Nixon, Vixen, and a guy named Flynn. And so what we learned very, very early on is that Vixen is a captive, and she is being held captive by a guy named Nixon. And she wants to be let go, and she wants to be free. And Nixon refuses to let her go. Now, it is a captor-captive situation. However, it's a very different captive-captive situation in that he is not abusive to her. He is not cruel to her. He is not mean to her. He treats her like she is the world. He treats her like a goddess. He treats her like a queen. The one thing he says is an absolute is he will never let her go. And she has not been out for 2 years. And she has not seen the sun in 2 years. And so he's holding her against her will. And so we can talk about the ethics of that later. And then we learn that he is part of a criminal enterprise. And we learned that it sounds like they do heists. Like they're the kind of, it's like a crew that comes together of multiple members that have different expertise, and they steal, and they, you know, whatever the job is they do, they get the job done. And so whenever they work on a job, he leaves. They live on an island. He leaves and goes to the mainland, and they commit the job, and then he comes back and he sees her and whatever. So things are like coming to a head, and she really wants out, and she's starting to act out, and she's starting to be like really aggressive towards him and really treating him in like really negative ways. They have a very toxic relationship, but it's very clear in a screwed up, messed up way that he loves her. And in a screwed up, messed up way, she needs him, but she refuses to acknowledge it, because then she will give credence to the situation that she's in, and she refuses to do that. And so they continue on this toxic dynamic of like push and pull, of angst, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, because she can't allow herself to admit that she cares for him, because then if she does, in her mind, she's condoning what he's done to her. And there also is another component of her having a lapse in memory, and she doesn't remember how they came to be together. And clearly there was something that happened in a cabin, and she refuses. She's buttoned up those memories, closed them up tight, and is never going to look at them again. And he wants to encourage her to look at those memories, because if she looks at those memories, then the circumstances around them being together will look very different to her, he believes, but he's not going to force her to do it. And so the story evolves as a guy named Flynn comes on the scene, and Flynn is taken by her and is captivated by her because she's very beautiful, and he recognizes that she's being held against her will, and he wants to set her free. And so he's going to buck up against the system and do whatever he has to do to get her free. And so and we have to see like what is going to evolve between Flynn and Vixen. And so that's where the story sort of evolves from there, and it is so, so good. I know that usually Vixen's character I don't like because it's constant arguing, it's constant fighting, it's constant bucking against the system, but in this instance it really works because I understand why she does what she does, and I understand her fear, and I understand her fear of herself and her fear of her circumstances, and her lack of acknowledgement of things, and her denial. And like at some point he calls her like a toxic, like she is absolutely toxic. But I feel like the story is done well. Like I really, really enjoyed it. And I want more in this. Apparently RJ Lewis is going to be releasing another book finally after 2 years in this world. And it's called Taken. And it's going to be released in October of 2022. And so I'm really excited about that. I bookmarked it so that I can check that out. This book does end in an HEA. The spice in this book is off the freaking chain. It is a 5 for sure. The chemistry and the dynamics between Vixen and Nixon and the sex that they have is off the chain ridiculous, like for sure. And she acknowledges it from the jump that they are just red hot spicy in the bed, and that's part of the problem is that they don't communicate. They argue, they have sex, they argue, they have sex, and that's what they do. Like there is no in-between dynamic between the two of them, and the communication piece is what's really missing. And so if they just add to their communication and do better with the communication, then you would think that the relationship would evolve. But then we're still dealing with the captor-captive situation. And so the way that the author takes an arc and like weaves that complicated tale and ultimately gets you to the ending, you're just like, oh my God, I'm in it to win it. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, and then some. And it's fantastic. It's really well done, and I loved it. And whoever recommended this to me, thank you so much. I'm so happy that you did because I really enjoyed it. I could breeze through this like it was like water. I was like, and it was the lifeblood of what I needed to survive for that day. And so it was just so, so good. And so I'm so happy that I did it. And like I said, I cannot wait to read Taken because Taken is going to be really, really good. And so I don't want to tell too much more about it because I don't want to spoil it for you because I want it to be a surprise, because there is a little three-way dynamic because you don't know if it's going to be Flynn, you don't know if it's going to be Nixon, you don't know what she's going to choose. And so it's fantastic. So having said that, you guys, right? Like I had a really good reading week. I'm really excited about that. I'm really happy. I made some really good picks. I'm making my way through my August TBR. And as is always the case, I'm not going to finish all the books, but they will carry over into September. But I am perfectly okay with that. Having said that, without further ado, that's all that I have for today. I really hope that you enjoyed the content. As you have been doing, please put in the box below any feedback that you have for me, as well as any books that you want to see me read and recommend for me so I can put it on the TBR. And that's all that I have for today. Thank you so much for joining me, guys, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.